How is it?
get the patch out for that vulnerability.
Oh, for the SSO fix, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I saw your question in the thread.
Oh yeah, let's chat YAML. Did you have time to put something together? No worries if
I
not.
do, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So like first of all, like is yeah, well actually let's look at that. So here's like a very let's put this in here too. I think this is somewhat very made up example, but like of a team. This is a team YAML file. Um, and so we've got some software packages that have labels. We've got custom settings that have labels.
Yeah.
And basically all I was proposing is that we move labels up here with policies and queries and then refer to them the same way we've been referring to them. Because that would first
Yeah.
off, let like from an implementation standpoint, it'd be a lot easier to like get all these and parse them first before something tries to use them so that we know ahead of time what exists and what doesn't. Because otherwise we've got to like scan through all of these things and try to find
Mm,
any place that asks that or mentions labels. Uh,
gotcha. I see. And does it also solve like the stepping on
No,
other
not
teams?
not as such, but it's a good stepping stone towards it because if eventually we're gonna do team scoped labels, this is exactly how we would do it anyway. We would put it up here just like we do with policies and queries. The difference would be in the implementation, these would get tagged with an actual team ID and they would be, so then they'd be namespace, they'd be automatically like scoped to the team. So it wouldn't matter if two teams had the same names.
Right,
Right
right.
now, it's still like if two teams, included a file that had a label with the same name in it, then they would update each other. This is
I
not
see.
a problem with queries because queries already are team scoped, so we have no issue there if two teams have the same ones in them. And
Right. Makes
for
sense.
for profiles, I'm
I looked
not
into
sure.
queries too. Yeah, I mean queries and policies, I think both have yeah, team and name combined uniqueness
Yeah, these
constraint.
ones
Yeah.
definitely. I
Yeah.
think you'd asked
Yeah.
about profiles, and profiles I can't say for sure.
I think it's the same. I think,
Yeah,
yeah. Um, or same model where it's like each team is a totally independent bucket
yeah.
of things.
So then they can't
Um,
really stamp on each other.
right. Makes sense. I see. Yeah, I mean, I like this approach, and like, I mean, one benefit I'm seeing too is like, um, it's pretty seamless, like transition. Like we're not changing the path. We don't have to support backwards compatibility, right, for the new names underscore path.
Yeah.
Get stuck with that, which totally makes sense to me. I mean, the stepping on other teams' problem or other teams' labels problem might be worth solving. And if you were saying like, I mean, one approach, right, is we could just go ahead and add in team for labels, add that to the uniqueness constraint as well, right? For
Yeah, it's just
labels.
I mean, it's definitely something we'd have to scope out because once we do that and we're saying that there can be like these team labels, then in the UI, we have to start respecting that. And like the right now, all the APIs for labels just send names around.
Right. I mean, well, do we in the first iteration? Like, what if we just, I mean, we'd
Yeah,
want to
because
think of,
if the API sends a name and there can be three different labels with that name because they're scoped to a team, then you kind of need to know which one you're talking about in the API. So we'd switch it over to use IDs.
oh, I see, because we're using name. Where are we using name?
We're using name in pretty much all of the create and update label API in the like in our regular like public facing API. I think I guess
Oh,
the design
yikes.
there was like to let it be easier for people to use the API, but it's one of those situations where in the end it probably makes it harder. Um,
Yeah, I'm guessing that was like an old, because labels have been around since I joined Fleet, and I think
yeah.
it's been that way. Like now we're using ID as like the, right, Rachel, like that's how we handle things in the API in Fleet.
With
And if we
the,
were, oh, go for it.
you mean like we use ID in the labels API?
No, like everywhere else, like if I went to a software title page, like we're gonna see software title slash
Mhm.
ID, or if I went to like a policies page, I'd see policy slash ID, like the
Yeah,
identifier we're using for almost everything else
And
um,
yeah.
yeah, the
is,
labels have IDs. It's more like when you go to update a label
I
when we
see it.
send it to a
It's a
server,
bunch
we
of
say,
rework. I
yeah,
think
well,
it's
or it would be, I think what we'd end up doing is like updating the APIs to accept either a name or in a separate property, you could send like label ID and use it that way. So that was still
yeah,
backwards compatible.
too
But it's
too
like, yeah, I
vague.
don't know who, it's kind of weird to use an API that way with names anyway. So like it'd probably be a nice change for people, but it's definitely a block of work. So
Yeah, and it's not necessary here. I was just wondering if like um yeah, if we could go, but we don't have a solution for the stepping on
for
other
uh
teams.
did I lose
Labels.
did I stop sharing? Must or am I still
We
sharing?
still have that hole. And I guess yeah, that's a gap we just missed during design too.
For yeah, okay, there we go. For the stomping on each other's things, yeah. The only other solution that I can think of that would also work with the use case of teams would be to go back to the idea of making them centrally managed, and then for people who want to do like by team repos,
Hmm.
we could tell those customers that they can keep the labels in another repo that's like a sub repo of the team ones. It'd be a little bit of labor on their end that they might not, they might push back on. Like, so
Right.
you'd end up
Oh,
like, you can check them out. You could check out like a team repo, and then it would like automatically pull down the labels one, and you can use all the files in there. But if you wanted to make a new label, you'd have to do a separate commit.
I mean, we could also like communicate to them like, hey, these are still global labels for now. But we like let you create them at the team level. So like we recommend putting, like Max on Sequoia parentheses team name or something.
Right,
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah. So it's like we can tell the customers to like that they need to namespace things, and then it's on them to regulate that behavior. And if they don't, there's a decent chance it comes back to us as a bug, but we'll just have to
Yeah. I mean,
figure it
if we
out.
document it,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. We could totally do
Are there?
that. Because I mean, even regardless, oh, sorry, go for it, Rachel.
Oh no, go ahead. I mean,
Oh, I was gonna say, regardless of like this team example, like if even if you've got everything in one, or the Hubble example, you have everything in a mono repo, and just you happen to by accident create labels, two labels with the same name, you run into the same scenario, right?
If everything was in the monorepo, then we could detect that there was two labels with the same name and just say you can't do this. We would assume if it's just the same label and it changed, we would just assume that you're trying to update that label.
If it's the
Um,
same label and it changed. Wait, yeah, help me understand that. I'm trying to think through it. That's the
so like
world. Everything's in the same repo.
Yeah, so like let's pretend this was the
Yeah,
global one, not a Teams one, and we had like two of these, right?
yeah.
Like if labels one had a label called foo and labels two had one called foo, we could just say
Hmm.
you're trying to make two labels with the same name, like we're gonna just bail. If
Right,
labels one had one called foo, just this one file, and then later they do it again and it still has foo, but the query or something is different, we would just
right.
assume that it's the same, they want the same one, but they just want to update the query.
What if you had labels one in Jets and labels one in another team mono repo?
Um, oh, well, yeah. I mean, if it's the monorepo versus separate repos thing isn't really the
It's
issue.
more like separate files.
It's the separate
Yeah.
it's separate team files that both have labels in them. That's the issue. And that like Rachel said, like these look like team labels right now, but they're really for the time being in the short term, these are still global labels because we don't have team labels.
Right, right, right. I see what you're saying. So now, unlike queries, which are like totally
Yeah.
in their own bucket, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, these
Labels are actually like they could exist in another team file, and it's actually turns out it's the same label. It's the same
yeah.
global label instead of this independent
We can
label.
definitely, if they're trying to do like in a monorepo, if they're doing two teams at once, we can detect it if they
Right,
had, but that's not the use case we're looking at, right? Like two independent teams that are doing their team stuff separately,
right.
still get into this situation. So short-term namespacing them is definitely a solution for that.
But for us, like when we're dogfooding things, if we put like the same label uh in the canary, like the workstation's canary team, and then the workstation's team, they reference the same set of labels, we would know.
For
All right.
us,
Yeah, go for it.
we like, yeah, I mean that's a so there for us if we're gonna do this, like I don't that's a good question. I don't know. Like we can
Trying to, yeah, I'm like kind of tying myself in knots, but I'm trying to
yeah,
picture all
it's
the,
like I mean, for our dog fooding, if we wanted to manage the labels completely via GitOps,
yeah,
and we don't want to, like, we can also, alongside this, we can also let you do labels in the top level, like the org settings file, because it's really going to be doing the same thing anyway. So
right,
we could support this. It doesn't really cost us much more implementation wise. And then
right,
for teams that are not doing multi-team repo things, this is just the way you do it, and there you go. Uh,
right.
and
Labels
then what
live
it
up
becomes is
here.
like, yeah, this is basically the exact same thing as doing this. It just we let you do it in two places. So like we probably wouldn't use this for Canary and workstations and stuff. Like we would, and if we did, it would only be for ones that were specific to those teams, and we would probably namespace them too.
Right,
Right?
right. Like the best practice would be to do it all in the default YAML because it's all global
Yeah.
at that point, and then you would reference them in your team level YAML files, which makes sense. It's a little bit more iterative than this new like put the path. It sounds like it's also easier for us to build than
Yeah.
like reference the path at all the spots. So
Yeah.
that
Definitely.
makes sense to me. Like if that's the best practice and we still want to support Hubble, I'm going to throw one more other option out there because I wrote this in the doc too. I'm like, as I was thinking about this more, and people are going to have to be deleting labels, right, in the UI, like for cleanup and testing and stuff like that. It doesn't really make sense to disable them in GitOps mode
Yeah.
anyways. Like I think it makes sense to keep them enabled. And if that's the case, and we let team admins add them in the UI, then we don't even need this. Like if we updated the permissions, right, which is what Hubble wants, such that team admins can add labels. Let's say they go into the UI and they're allowed to add labels, new world. We wouldn't need labels in the team YAML file, right? Because then they could just reference the labels here.
Sure. I mean, the question is whether teams want to manage their configuration via GitOps.
Right. I mean, I think we're kind of like stuck right now where labels, and I kind of thought about this, or this is why I was thinking about it. Like you can't really test a label. There's no way to try out a new label if you turn on GitOps mode. Like if we're truly trying to say like if you use GitOps, the best practice is to get everything set up, turn on GitOps mode and
Hmm.
manage things that way. You can test queries, you can test policies, all that good stuff. Can't
I
really
mean, I
test
guess
label.
you can like run a live query like for a label
Yeah.
and then see like what
That's true.
yeah,
Is that what you do for
which hosts
policies
do you
too?
get results from.
There's a run a policy option
Oh, okay.
as well. Yeah, that's
So for-
true. But you wouldn't be able to see the filtering. Like you wouldn't get, I guess like you would. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Rachel. It feels kind of
Do we
hacky.
have on the labels page, do we have like a button to run a live query when you enter the query?
No.
Maybe we could like maybe it makes sense to make a feature request to add one that says like test label or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. But I'm wondering like, okay, like I think I like where we're headed with making this smaller, where like we don't do this path thing everywhere. Um, to Scott's point. And then I also like am now realizing we do want the best practice to be for now, like this iterative change, all the labels in the default YAML file, which is most of our customers,
which
including
we can,
us.
and if we do it, if we do this, we have the option too of making it more traditional GitOps, where like if you have this in the default file, then we will only have these labels and it will delete things that are not in here. Like we can't do
Right.
that with the team ones because you don't want to delete things that are used by other teams, but we can
Right.
do it here. So, and we could just say like, if you don't have this, we won't delete anything. But if you have this thing in here, then you are managing. The reason I bring that up is because I know that Hubble wants the multi-team thing, but there's a bunch of other customers labeled on that ticket. If they just want to be able to manage their global label,
Yeah.
and we could give them that.
Right. I guess the difficulty there is like, I mean, it's kind of a weird, we haven't encountered this problem yet, but on upgrade, well, first of all, I guess we're documenting all top level keys as required now. So that'd be a change. We'd
Yeah,
say like,
yeah, if
yeah,
we have to make it optional, because otherwise, yeah, on upgrade, they would lose all
right.
the levels, which would be bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like if you specify labels, then you're committing to managing it
Yeah.
here. Um, but I'm still thinking like the iterative pass here is like that this approach for everybody else. And then Hubble's asking their team admins go create a label in the UI and then reference it in your team YAML. Like it's this hybrid approach. And then we can iterate on the team level
Okay.
labels later. Like we can just
Yeah. Do you
totally
think they'd be
carve
cool
out.
with not having to manage, with not being able to manage the creation of labels in GitOps, and they'd be satisfied with just being able to manage applying labels in GitOps? Then that sounds like a great solution.
Yeah, I think so too. The only thing we're handling now, or the change to the permissions would still be relevant, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
The change to permissions and the thing, Rachel, that I think that you already have a ticket for of like letting team admins do GitOps on just their team file. Or is that already a thing you can do? What there was a change
Separate
somewhere.
story,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that is something that I think is in the sprint, right?
Yeah. Something, or maybe it was to allow them to do multiple team files, which I guess wouldn't necessarily be relevant for this use case because it's like one repo per team. But
Okay. So I'm just writing this stuff down. It's just we can check it one more time too. So optional, like new optional, um, top level key in the default YAML, right? Labels. I, and then ba-ba-da, no new underscore path keys for referencing, or paths, sorry, for
Hmm.
referencing labels. Stick with existing keys. And then, yeah, workflow change for team admins. I mean, is it just team admins? Yeah, I guess we can just start with just team admins. Workflow change for team admins. Go to the UI to create labels, reference them by name in team YAML. And then we've got stuff later to discuss, but anything else I'm missing? in the now.
No, that sounds good to me. And just to be clear, so we're saying the optional top level key and default YAML, and are we saying that if they provide it, then we'll manage the whole life cycle, like create and delete,
If it's specified,
just like we do with policies and queries, or like if it's the label's not in there, we delete it.
then we delete. Or then, I guess this is really like, then the labels specified match. Or how do we word this?
So then the labels specified are the only ones that will be uh, created, I guess, that will be present in the system.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that will show up.
that will show up. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we have dry run for. It'll tell you like we'll delete, 5 labels, and it also can tell you um, that the labels that you are. Do we let you delete labels now that are used by things?
Um,
Good question.
there's
I
a
think we prevent you from deleting them for if it's used for certain things, but not for others. Is that true? No.
Yeah, I thought we let you, but we show
Because there's something like this will break profiles or something. Oh, so do we let you?
No, it just warns you.
Okay, okay.
if a software uses this
Uh,
label.
Oh, and then we show if a profile's broken,
okay.
right?
But we're saying this, if a software uses this label, the label will not be able to be deleted. So I'm assuming we show an error
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could
So
we surface the same error
yeah, I
in
think
YAML?
yeah. The I noticed something with I think it was profiles where so a lot of stuff in GitOps will just give you an error if like something's misconfigured. But it seems like certain things like profiles, if you try to push a profile with GitOps with a label and the label doesn't exist, it like does all the other GitOps stuff, and then it gets to that, and then it says, "Oops, this label doesn't exist," and it bails out.
Mm,
Which we can,
That's why we have you do the dry run.
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Uh,
error. Oh, but we do error in that case if the label doesn't exist.
uh,
Or
that's a
I
that's a
think,
good question. I
yeah, I
hope
think
so.
that
it
Um,
sounds like we
I think
do.
that's what we do for most things if the label
Then would
doesn't.
it be the same for software? Like we would just bail out an error?
I think the
Think so.
ideal case would be if you try to delete a label that's being used, we either warn you or just quit entirely and say we won't do it unless you remove these things.
Agreed, yeah.
And if you try to create a label, use a label whose name doesn't exist, then we also bail and say this label doesn't exist. That's the ideal case. There's probably some wrinkles there because that then means the same thing I was talking about earlier of like kind of scraping through like all the levels and looking for labels. But
Mm-hmm.
um,
Error if label doesn't exist when applying configuration. I mean, it sounds like if I'm understanding what you were saying, Scott, we do this today.
I I think we do it, but I don't know if we do it on the dry run. So that's something I will check out. Like
Okay.
I saw that error code in the actual apply, which means like all these other things have happened already for real, and then it gets to that. But that would be my certainly my preference is that the dry run would kick it out.
Yeah, agreed.
And then yeah, uh what about if
Same for
the for
software.
deleting? So if you try to remove a label using GitOps that is in use, what do we want to do?
I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, from the perspective of the user, it's the same thing, right? You get to like the thing that's trying to use it, the software or the profile, and the label's gone.
Yeah.
So ideally, it's we error in both cases, I
Yeah, I
think.
would say so. Because like if we let you go ahead with it, and the next time you try to like once it gets that software, it's going to say, okay, this this label doesn't exist. So it'd be
Yeah.
the same issue.
Okay, and what do we have for labels right now? Or what can we apply labels to? Profiles, software, and queries, right? Queries is this,
Queries are
right?
coming.
Yeah.
Um, profiles and software. I don't think there's anything else yet.
Okay. So let me up.
Yeah.
Update the YAML and test plan for both those errors.
Custom set as profiles.
Would specify that the labels are the only ones that show up. I mean, I just have a lot of updates to do for the wireframes, which is cool.
Yeah, just so far it's just software and profiles, and I was gonna probably fold the query ones into this.
Okay, let's hit the UI real quick because there's going to be
Yeah.
a change, right? Just to talk through it together. GitOps mode's not going to be a thing for labels. So you're going to be able to add, edit, and delete. Permissions are also still going to change. So team admins will be able to see edit and delete for the labels that they authored. And they'll be able to see or read all of their labels. And that's not a change, but they'll now have like create.
Do
They'll
we
be able to
have
see add label, edit. They'll always be able to see add label, create as many as they want to, and only be able to edit and delete labels they authored, that's what we were planning on doing.
okay, that's a new
First.
thing. The author part, is that, or does that already exist?
The author part was already a part of the plan.
Okay.
That's the Hubble wrinkle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
What if
yeah,
we
that,
like,
go ahead.
what if we held off on the author thing and did an air guitar for like, what if we took that like team labels feature request at face value and like just maybe like air guitar what it would look like and then like maybe from there either decide to do this or like
I think
just
we got to do it because it's a Q2 promise. Yeah. I think we got to move forward with it, but we should still, yeah, we should still come back to the team label experience. But I still feel good about, like, I don't feel like we decided earlier, I'm not second guessing the decision to add this tweak. We've done it in the past
yeah,
for
I guess it doesn't
queries.
hurt to have an author
Yeah.
because like just like auditability. I mean, we have an author on the
Yeah.
like
And we've
policy
taken that
papers and
approach
stuff.
too for queries. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you do it
So,
via GitOps, you're logged in as somebody, so it just uses that person as the author.
Yeah,
yeah, like whatever
Yeah, the
automation.
GitOps user.
Yeah.
So I guess the only thing about this then is like, and this is just, I guess, documentation. If we remove GitOps mode completely from this, then like for teams that are using it in a kind of more normal way to just manage their global labels, like they won't get the benefit of GitOps mode for that. Like they would still be able to like mess around in the UI and have it be replaced next time they do GitOps.
Right, right. Which I think
Uh,
is okay in this pass. But you bring up a good point, which is like specifically for Hubble. Their team admins are going to be logging in to the UI, creating labels, using them in their YAML. Oh, and then that's it. Because they're
yeah,
not going to
we
use
would tell
default. They're not
yeah,
going to
we
use
tell
the
Hubble not
default
to use
YAML.
default.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which
Yeah.
they're not going to. Yeah. They're going to leave out the labels in that case. Okay, then that works. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's not a really good way for us to kind of detect like that a team is using that feature and like conditionally turn on GitOps mode for that because
Yeah.
yeah, we don't keep track of that sort of thing. So
Sounds good.
when you
Okay.
guys say air guitar, are you talking about like a mock-up? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a story that like we're not necessarily planning on like bringing into a sprint.
We used to
Yeah.
call it spikes.
Yeah, kind of like design. Yeah, Spike. But yeah, I hear you, Rachel. I think we just have bigger fish to fry. Like we've got the compliance partner. stuff. We've got like those other requests. This one I feel like just falls to the bottom. I think we'll come back to it, but lower priority to figure this out for team labels.
I feel good about where we got to.
Me too. I will, in a couple hours, I'll rejig the YAML UI and the test plan. And then I'll ping both of you.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, y'all. Good stuff.
All right, thank you.
See you.